My name is Rachel Carter, 29, and I never thought coming home early would change my life forever. After 3 exhausting days at a medical workshop in Chicago, all I wanted was the comfort of my own bed. Instead, I found dozens of cars lining my street and a house full of strangers. Well, not strangers exactly, but 99 relatives I barely knew, celebrating under a banner reading, "Family means forever." The irony wasn't lost on me. Before I continue, where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family. Trust me, what happened next will show you exactly why blood isn't always thicker than water. Let me rewind a bit, so you understand why finding my house full of relatives felt like a punch to the gut. I've dedicated the past 7 years to medical research, specifically working on targeted cancer treatments that could revolutionize how we approach aggressive lymphomas. My team at Boston Medical Research Institute has been pushing boundaries, and this workshop in Chicago represented a major milestone. I was presenting our preliminary findings to some of the top oncologists in the country. My family never understood my passion. Why waste time on all that schooling when you could start a real career? My mother Diana would say, somehow considering medical research less valid than my brother Kevin's job selling insurance. Don't get me wrong. All careers have value, but the dismissal of my dreams started long before college. Growing up in our modest suburban home outside Boston, it became clear early on that Kevin was the golden child. When I brought home straight A's, my report card would be glanced at and placed on the refrigerator. When Kevin brought home B's and C's, my parents threw a celebration dinner. "He works so hard," they'd say, while my achievements were simply expected. The pattern continued through high school. Kevin's baseball games were family events. My debate team championships were attended only if nothing else was going on. My father James was a bit more supportive before he passed away from heart failure 5 years ago. He'd occasionally slip me encouraging notes or privately tell me he was proud, but never in front of Mom or Kevin. After Dad died, the house became a financial burden for Mom. That's when Kevin suggested we purchase it together. He'd live on the first floor with his wife Stephanie, I'd take the renovated second floor, and Mom would move to the in-law apartment we built in the converted garage. It seemed like the perfect solution and maybe, just maybe, a chance to finally bridge the emotional gap between us. I used my research fellowship money for the down payment on my half. Kevin got most of his share from Stephanie's parents. We became co-owners, with clear boundaries about shared spaces and responsibilities documented in writing, my attorney Barbara's suggestion, which at the time seemed unnecessarily formal for family. The arrangement worked reasonably well for about 4 years. I traveled frequently for research conferences, while Kevin and Stephanie established themselves as neighborhood socialites, frequently hosting dinner parties that I was welcome to join, but somehow always scheduled when I had lab commitments. Mom settled into her apartment, dropping by my space unannounced despite my requests for a simple text beforehand. "I'm family, Rachel. I shouldn't need an appointment to see my daughter," she'd say, often rearranging my things to be more organized while I was at work. Still, I made efforts. Sunday dinners when my schedule allowed. Holiday gatherings where I'd smile through Kevin's stories dominating conversation while my professional milestones went unacknowledged. Last Christmas, my research was featured in a prestigious medical journal. No one mentioned it, but everyone celebrated when Kevin got a sales award. Despite everything, I kept trying. When I learned about the Chicago workshop 3 months ago, I immediately texted Kevin about the dates I'd be away, asking him to keep an eye on my space. His response, "No problem, have a good trip. House will be quiet that weekend." That text would replay in my mind like a cruel joke when I stood in my doorway that Friday evening. The workshop had been incredible. My presentation received outstanding feedback, with several senior researchers suggesting collaborative projects. Dr. Winters, one of the most respected oncologists in the field, had personally invited me to discuss potential applications. I cut our meeting short, declining dinner to catch an earlier flight home, eager to decompress before the weekend. I had even picked up small gifts for everyone: a Chicago snow globe for Mom's collection, craft beer from a famous local brewery for Kevin, and chocolate truffles for Stephanie. I thought maybe, just maybe, We could all celebrate my success together for once. How naive I was. The Uber dropped me off a block away from my house because of all the parked cars. Initially, I assumed a neighbor was hosting some event. As I wheeled my suitcase closer, recognition dawned. I knew these vehicles. That was Uncle Robert's vintage Mustang, Aunt Patricia's minivan with the dance school sticker, Cousin Michael's motorcycle. My pace slowed as confusion set in. The lights in my house blazed from every window, and I could hear music and laughter even from the sidewalk. Through the front bay window, I glimpsed a flash of color. A large banner stretched across my living room wall. Family means forever. My hands trembled slightly as I inserted my key in the front door. The noise inside was deafening. Dozens of conversations overlapping, music playing, children shrieking as they ran through the house. The entryway was crammed with shoes and coats I didn't recognize. The first person to notice me was my cousin Tiffany, whom I hadn't seen in at least 3 years. She froze mid-sentence, wine glass halfway to her lips. "Rachel? Oh my God, you're here," she exclaimed, drawing attention from those nearby. Like a wave, awareness of my presence spread through the rooms, conversations faltering as heads turned my way. I stood rooted in place, suitcase still in hand, as I surveyed the scene. Every inch of my home was occupied by relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, and people I vaguely recognized from childhood reunions, but couldn't name. Some faces I hadn't seen since my father's funeral. My mother's cousin Janet was serving food from my kitchen. Children I'd never met were playing video games on my television. Someone had moved my research books from the coffee table to make room for photo albums and snack trays. Through the crowd, I spotted my mother holding court in the dining room, gesturing animatedly to a group of older relatives. Her laugh cut off abruptly when our eyes met across the room. For a split second, pure surprise registered on her face before she composed herself. Kevin emerged from the kitchen, carrying a tray of drinks. When he saw me, he nearly dropped it. His wife Stephanie appeared beside him, whispering something in his ear that made his face flush red. The house had been transformed. Family photos covered the walls, curiously most featuring Kevin, my parents, or extended family groupings where I was absent. A slideshow played on someone's laptop, displaying vacation images I'd never seen before. A Carter family tree poster had been meticulously created and mounted on foam board, with certain branches highlighted in gold. "Rachel." My mother finally approached, arms outstretched for a hug that felt mechanical. "What are you doing home today? We thought you were coming back tomorrow." I felt dozens of eyes on us as I responded, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. The workshop ended early. I caught an earlier flight. Kevin appeared at Mom's side, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Great to see you, sis."
Surprise.
We, decided to have a little family gathering. A little gathering? I gestured at the crowd filling every room of our house. "There must be 100 people here." 99 actually, Stephanie chimed in with a proud smile. "We've been planning the Carter-Wilson family reunion for months. Everyone's here. Even Great-Aunt Edith came from Florida." The word months echoed in my head. Months of planning, yet somehow no one thought to mention it to me. An elderly woman I recognized as my father's aunt approached, squinting at me. "Is this James's girl? My goodness, I hardly recognized you. Last time I saw you, you were in high school." "Hello, Aunt Edith," I managed. "It's been a long time." "Your brother has been such a wonderful host," she continued, giving us the grand tour of the house, showing us all the improvements you've made since your father passed. "He said you're rarely home because of work." I felt a muscle twitch in my jaw. "Is that so?" As I moved through the crowd, more revelations emerged. Cousin Ryan mentioned booking his flight 6 months ago. Uncle Paul thanked me for letting everyone use my space, something I had never agreed to. Aunt Carol commented on how she'd enjoyed staying in my lovely bedroom the past 3 days. My bedroom. Someone had been sleeping in my bed. I excused myself and climbed the stairs to my second-floor apartment, finding the door unlocked. Inside, my private space had been completely invaded. Air mattresses cover my office floor. Suitcases were stacked in corners. My bed was rumpled with unfamiliar sheets. Personal items had been moved or tucked away. Someone had taped children's artwork over my framed research certificates. I stood in the center of my violated space, breathing deeply to maintain composure. Through the floor, I could hear the party continuing below. The celebration I hadn't been invited to in my own home. My phone chimed with a text from Madison. "How was the flight? Did you make it home okay?" I stared at her message, my closest friend completely unaware of the surreal scenario unfolding around me. Before I could respond, Kevin appeared in my doorway. "Hey," he said softly, closing the door behind him. "Can we talk?" The conversation that followed would change everything. Kevin's discomfort was palpable as he shifted his weight from one foot to another in my bedroom doorway. I sat on the edge of my bed, a bed that smelled of unfamiliar perfume, and waited. "Look, Rachel, I can explain," he started, running a hand through his hair. "This reunion has been in the works for a while, and we thought—" "We," I interrupted. "Who exactly is we?" "Mom, Stephanie, and me," he admitted. "And some of the aunts helped coordinate." I remained silent, forcing him to fill the uncomfortable void. It started small, just talking about getting the local family together. Then Aunt Patricia suggested inviting the Florida relatives, and it snowballed from there. His explanation came out rehearsed, as if he'd been preparing it. "We figured with your workshop in Chicago, the timing worked out perfectly." Perfectly for what, Kevin? For using my home without my knowledge? For moving my belongings? For letting strangers sleep in my bed? "They're not strangers, they're family," he corrected, his tone taking on that familiar condescending edge. "And it's not just your home, it's our home. I co-own this place too, remember? My apartment is my private space," I countered. "We agreed on that when we bought the house." The door opened, and my mother entered without knocking, Stephanie hovering behind her. "What's going on up here?" Mom asked, though her defensive posture suggested she already knew. "We have guests downstairs wondering where their hosts went." I was just asking Kevin why no one thought to inform me about this reunion happening in my home, I said evenly. Mom waved her hand dismissively. "It was a last-minute decision. We knew you were busy with your work thing." "Last minute?" I raised an eyebrow. "People booked flights 6 months ago. Cousin Ryan told me he's been looking forward to this since Christmas." A flash of irritation crossed my mother's face. "Well, we didn't want to bother you with the details. You're always so wrapped up in your research. Besides, we thought you were coming home tomorrow." "Because Kevin told me to book my return flight for Saturday," I said, turning to my brother. "You specifically said nothing was happening at the house this weekend." Kevin had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I might have gotten the dates mixed up." "For an event you've been planning for months?" I challenged. Stephanie stepped forward, arms crossed. "We didn't think you'd want to participate anyway. You always work through family gatherings, typing away on your laptop or taking calls. So rather than invite me and let me decide, you deliberately scheduled it when I'd be away and lied about the dates?" The pieces were falling into place now. "Were you hoping I wouldn't find out at all?" "Of course not," Kevin said quickly. "We were going to clean everything up before you got back." "Including the people sleeping in my bedroom? The strangers using my bathroom? Going through my things?" "They're elderly relatives who can't handle stairs," Mom interjected. "We had to put them somewhere comfortable." I stood up, needing to create physical distance. Why wasn't I told about any of this? An email, a text, anything? The three of them exchanged glances that confirmed what I already suspected. My exclusion had been deliberate. "You're taking this too personally," Mom finally said. "It's not like you participate in family events anyway. You're always working. And you've never seemed interested in the extended family," Kevin added. "When was the last time you called Aunt Carol or visited Cousin Jennifer's new baby?" The hypocrisy was staggering. Maybe because I've never been included in family communication. I didn't even know Jennifer was pregnant. A knock at the door interrupted us. Cousin Matthew poked his head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but people are asking about dinner timing." "We'll be right down," Stephanie responded with a bright smile that vanished the moment he closed the door. I moved to my dresser, finding drawers partially open, contents rearranged. "Who's been going through my things?" "No one's going through anything," Mom said defensively. "We just needed to make space. Your things are fine." As if on cue, a crash sounded from my bathroom, followed by a child's oops. I rushed in to find a young boy I'd never met standing amid shattered glass, my grandmother's antique perfume bottles that had been on my shelves. "I was just looking," the boy said, wide-eyed. I turned back to Kevin, Mom, and Stephanie. "This is unacceptable." "It's just stuff, Rachel," Mom sighed. "Family is what matters." I laughed, though there was no humor in it. Family? Is that what this is? I walked to my closet, finding it partially filled with strangers' luggage. Behind me, Kevin cleared his throat. "While we're talking, Stephanie and I were thinking, since you're hardly ever here anyway, maybe you'd consider selling your half of the house to us. We could use the extra space now that we're thinking about starting a family." And there it was, the real agenda surfacing at last. Before I could respond, Stephanie's mother appeared in the doorway. "Diana, we need your help settling a debate about James's mother's maiden name for the family tree." "Coming." My mother turned to me with a warning look. "We should get back to our guests. We can discuss this later. Try not to make a scene, Rachel. This reunion is important to everyone." As they filed out, I noticed a manila folder poking out from under the guest luggage in my closet. Pulling it out, I discovered it contained financial documents from Kevin's desk, papers showing multiple mortgage refinancing attempts, credit card statements with alarming balances, and a letter regarding denied loan applications. Pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known I was solving fell into place. The reunion, the sudden interest in buying my half of the house, the deliberate exclusion. It all connected. I carefully returned the folder, my mind racing. The noise from downstairs resumed. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. Through my window, I could see more relatives arriving, bearing food and gifts. A family celebration I hadn't been invited to in my own home. I had two choices: create a scene that would only reinforce whatever narrative they'd created about me, or respond in a way they would never expect. I chose the latter. With the confrontation still burning in my mind, I turned away from the window and surveyed my disrupted space. The sweet, powdery scent of my grandmother's shattered perfume bottles hung in the air, a family heirloom now reduced to glass shards on my bathroom floor. I opened my closet again and pulled out a small weekend bag, methodically packing essentials: clothes for a few days, toiletries, my laptop, and important documents. As I worked, I used my phone to take photos of my space, the state of my bedroom, the air mattresses covering my office floor, the rearranged furniture, and the broken items in the bathroom. I documented everything meticulously, date and timestamping the images. A soft knock interrupted my inventory. I opened the door to find Aunt Grace, my father's older sister, and one of the few relatives I'd stayed in contact with over the years. At 78, she stood straight-backed and clear-eyed, offering a sympathetic smile. "I thought I might find you up here," she said, her voice low. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, allowing her into the chaos of my invaded space. "I want you to know I had no idea you weren't informed about this reunion," she said, settling carefully on the edge of my bed. "When Diana and Kevin were sending out invitations, I specifically asked if you were involved in the planning. They assured me you were too busy, but had given your blessing." I shook my head, continuing to pack. "This is the first I've heard of it." Aunt Grace sighed deeply. "I suspected as much when I saw your face downstairs. Your father would be livid about this." The mention of my dad brought a tightness to my throat. "They've been sleeping in my bed, Aunt Grace, going through my things. Kevin just asked if I'd sell him my half of the house." Her eyebrows shot up. "Did he now? Interesting timing. What do you mean?" She glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. "I overheard Kevin and Stephanie talking with their financial advisor last night in the kitchen. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but old ears work better than people expect. They've overextended themselves, Rachel. Something about investment properties that aren't performing and credit card debt." This confirmed what the documents I'd found suggested. So this whole reunion, I can't say for certain it's connected, Aunt Grace said carefully. But it does seem convenient that they're suddenly hosting a massive family event, positioning themselves as the generous hosts and caretakers of the Carter legacy, right before asking you to give up your claim to the property. I zipped my bag closed, a plan crystallizing in my mind. I need to step away and think clearly. Would you do me a favor and not mention to anyone that I've packed a bag? Aunt Grace nodded, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. I brought this for you. It was meant to be a surprise during the family gift exchange tomorrow, but I think you should have it now. Inside was a delicate gold locket. When I opened it, I found a tiny photograph of my father and me at my medical school graduation, his face beaming with pride. He mailed me this photo the day after your graduation, Aunt Grace explained. Said it was the proudest day of his life, watching you accept your diploma. He knew you'd go on to do important things. Tears threatened, but I blinked them back. Thank you. As Aunt Grace stood to leave, she paused. Whatever you decide to do, remember that your father saw your worth even when others in this family failed to. Don't let them diminish that. After she left, I finished my preparations and practiced calm. I could hear the party escalating downstairs. Someone had started karaoke in the living room. Through my window, I watched as more relatives arrived, bearing casserole dishes and overnight bags. I sent a text to Madison. Family emergency. Need a friend tonight. Can I call you? Her response was immediate. Of course. What's happening? Rather than explain via text, I took a final look around my space, then shouldered my bag and made my way downstairs, navigating through clusters of relatives. Most were too engaged in conversations to notice me, though a few nodded or waved vaguely in my direction. In the kitchen, I found Kevin's wife Stephanie directing a team of aunts in dinner preparation, using my specialty cookware I'd specifically asked no one to touch. Rachel, there you are, she said with manufactured brightness. We're just getting dinner organized. Would you mind grabbing more folding chairs from the basement? Actually, I have some urgent work emails to handle, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I'll be stepping out for a bit. Her relief was poorly disguised. Oh, sure. Don't worry about anything here. We've got it all under control. As I headed for the door, I overheard my cousin Thomas asking Kevin about property values in the neighborhood. Kevin's response made me pause. Fantastic investment opportunity, he was saying. Once the paperwork goes through, we'll have the entire house and can finally renovate the second floor the way we've always wanted. The confidence in his tone suggested he considered my agreement to sell a foregone conclusion. I slipped out the front door unnoticed, the sounds of my family's celebration fading as I walked to my car. As I drove away, I called Madison, who listened in shocked silence to my explanation. Stay with us tonight, she insisted. Daniel is making his famous lasagna, and the guest room is already made up. I declined gently, having already booked a hotel room downtown. I needed space to think, to plan, to determine my next steps without emotional influence. The hotel lobby was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. As I checked in, the receptionist smiled professionally. Business or pleasure trip? Neither, I answered honestly. Just creating some necessary distance. In my room, I spread out the photos I'd taken, reviewing them alongside the images of the financial documents I'd glimpsed. I made lists, researched my legal options, and began drafting emails. By midnight, my strategic retreat had transformed into a counteroffensive. My phone had accumulated dozens of missed texts and calls, mostly from Kevin, growing increasingly demanding about my whereabouts. I responded only to Aunt Grace, assuring her I was safe and thanking her again for the locket. Before sleep finally claimed me in the early morning hours, I made one final note in my planning document. Family means forever, but so do consequences. Morning light filtered through the hotel curtains as I awoke to another barrage of notifications. 27 missed calls, mostly from Kevin and my mother. Their text messages evolved from casual inquiries about my whereabouts to increasingly frantic demands for response. From Kevin, "Where did you go last night? Mom is worried." From Mom, This is childish behavior, Rachel. Call me immediately. From Kevin. Seriously, sis, everyone's asking about you. At least let us know you're okay. From Stephanie. You're embarrassing Kevin in front of the family. I set my phone aside and ordered room service, a luxury I rarely indulged in, but today warranted it. While enjoying my coffee, I called Barbara Reynolds, my attorney since I'd first invested in the house. Rachel, she answered warmly. This is earlier than our usual check-ins. Everything okay? Not exactly, I replied, before detailing the events of the previous evening. Barbara listened without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification on specific details. So to summarize, she said when I finished, your co-owner and family members organized a major event in your shared property without your knowledge, allowed strangers access to your private living quarters, damaged your personal property, and then suggested you sell your interest in the house, all while you have documentation of financial distress that may be motivating their actions? That's the situation, I confirmed. Can you come to my office at 11? Bring the photos you took and any documentation of the original co-ownership agreement. We should discuss your options. I arrived at Barbara's downtown office precisely at 11, armed with my laptop and files. Her assistant showed me directly to the conference room where Barbara waited with a property law specialist she'd invited to join us. For the next 2 hours, we reviewed my options. The co-ownership agreement Kevin and I had signed contained specific clauses about respecting private spaces and requiring mutual consent for events involving more than 20 guests, provisions Barbara had insisted on that now seemed prescient. You have several paths forward, Barbara explained. We could file for a partition by sale, forcing liquidation of the property and division of proceeds. Alternatively, we could demand a buyout at current market value plus damages for the invasion of privacy and property destruction. What about my mother's living situation? I asked. She's in the in-law apartment. Your agreement specifies her right to occupy that space is contingent on both owners' consent, the property specialist noted. If you sell your interest or force a partition, that arrangement would need to be renegotiated with the new owner or owners. By early afternoon, we had formulated a plan. Rather than acting from emotion, we would proceed methodically and legally. I would return to the house after the reunion ended, document any damages with a professional assessment, and then present Kevin with formal options for resolving our co-ownership in light of the trust violations. The important thing, Barbara emphasized, is to communicate only in writing from this point forward. No verbal agreements, no emotional confrontations that can be misrepresented later. After leaving Barbara's office, I drove to my bank and accessed my safe deposit box, securing important documents and irreplaceable items like my grandmother's jewelry. Next, I met with my financial advisor to ensure my investments and accounts were properly protected and separated from any shared assets with Kevin. When I finally returned to the house late Sunday evening, the cars were gone, and an eerie quiet had replaced the previous day's chaos. The front door lock had a sticky residue suggesting someone had taped over it to allow easy access for guests. Another security violation that made me clench my jaw. Inside, the evidence of the massive gathering remained, furniture out of place, stains on carpets, empty bottles, and forgotten personal items scattered throughout common areas. I walked through methodically, documenting everything with my phone camera and taking detailed notes. Upstairs in my private apartment, the invasion was even more apparent. My bedroom had been used by at least 2 different groups, judging by the various personal items left behind. My office had served as a children's playroom, with crayon marks on my desk and sticky fingerprints on my bookshelf. In the bathroom, attempts had been made to clean up the broken perfume bottles, but glass fragments still glittered between floor tiles. As I surveyed the damage, my phone pinged with an email notification that made my heart skip. Dr. Winters from the Chicago workshop had forwarded an opportunity for a prestigious research position in Switzerland. A 3-year appointment with the International Medical Research Consortium to continue my work on targeted cancer treatments. Based on your impressive presentation in Chicago, he wrote, I've recommended you as our top candidate. They're eager to speak with you this week if you're interested. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, or more challenging. As I contemplated this potential career leap, I heard the front door open downstairs. Rachel. Kevin's voice called out. Your car's here. Where have you been? Instead of answering, I sent him a text. I'm documenting the damage to my space. Please respect my privacy. I'll communicate with you in writing about next steps. I could hear him stomp up the stairs, but my bedroom door remained firmly locked. His knock came a moment later. This is ridiculous, he said through the door. You can't just disappear during a family reunion and then lock yourself away. People were worried. I didn't respond, continuing my inventory instead. After several minutes of intermittent knocking and pleas, he gave up and returned downstairs. Soon after, I received texts from my mother saying I was breaking her heart with my childish behavior and ruining what had been a beautiful family gathering. I forwarded these messages to Barbara, then called a locksmith to change the locks on my apartment door and install a security system that would alert me to any entry. The locksmith arrived within the hour, and by evening, my space was secure. That night, I scheduled a video interview with the Swiss research team, reached out to several cleaning services for quotes on professional remediation of my space, and composed a detailed email to Kevin outlining the documented violations of our co-ownership agreement. The final piece of my calculated response was perhaps the most satisfying. I sent a professional, courteous email to each extended family member who had attended the reunion. In it, I expressed regret that I hadn't been informed of the gathering in advance, but hoped they had enjoyed their stay. I clarified that any future visits would require advance notice and ended with news of my potential international research opportunity, establishing a narrative that directly countered whatever story Kevin and my mother might spread. By morning, I had received several apologetic responses from relatives who claimed they had no idea I hadn't been involved in planning the reunion. Aunt Patricia even called, horrified to learn she had been sleeping in my bed without my permission. Kevin and your mother told everyone you were fully aware and had agreed to everything, she explained. They said you were too busy with work to help organize, but had given them your blessing to use the entire house. This information, while infuriating, was valuable confirmation of the deliberate deception. I thanked her for her honesty and added her statement to my growing file. When I finally emerged from my apartment the next day, I found Kevin waiting in the kitchen, his expression a mixture of anger and apprehension. We need to talk about this email you sent me, he began, waving his phone. Legal action? Documented violations? This is family, Rachel, not some business transaction. I maintained my composure. I prefer to communicate in writing from this point forward. I've made my position clear. This is about the house, isn't it? If you needed money, you could have just said so instead of threatening legal action. The irony of his statement was not lost on me. This is about respect, Kevin. Something that was clearly lacking when you decided to host 99 people in our home without my knowledge or consent. His face flushed. You're never here anyway. Always at work, always too busy for family. What difference does it make if we use the space when you're gone? The difference, I said evenly, is that it's my home too. My name is on the deed, my money paid for half of it, and my private space was violated. So, you're going to punish everyone over one misunderstanding? Mom is beside herself. Stephanie is in tears. Is that what you want? I gathered my car keys, ready to leave for my scheduled meeting with the Swiss research team. What I want is respect for my property and privacy. Everything else is outlined in the email from my attorney. I suggest you read it carefully and consult your own legal counsel. As I walked out, I could hear him on the phone immediately, his voice tight with panic as he presumably called my mother. Their problem had now become very real, and my solution was already in motion. The video interview with the International Medical Research Consortium exceeded my expectations. Dr. Winters had apparently given me a glowing recommendation, and the team in Switzerland seemed genuinely excited about my research approach. The position offered not only professional advancement, but also a housing allowance and relocation package. We would need your commitment within 2 weeks, Dr. Muller, the program director, explained. Our grant cycle begins next month, and we need our team in place. I expressed strong interest while being transparent about my current situation. I have some personal matters to resolve, but I don't anticipate any obstacles to accepting your offer. After the call, I sat in my car in the parking garage, letting the opportunity sink in. 3 years in Switzerland, continuing my research with increased funding and resources, working alongside international experts in the field, it was everything I had worked toward. The timing couldn't have been more serendipitous. Rather than returning home, I drove to a quiet cafe to map out my next steps. The Switzerland offer provided leverage and a timeline. Now I needed to execute my plan methodically. My first stop was a property management company specializing in high-end rentals. I met with their director, explaining my situation in broad strokes. I co-own a property, but will be relocating internationally. I'd like to retain my ownership interest, but have my portion professionally managed and rented during my absence. The director, Ms. Collins, asked thoughtful questions about the property and the co-ownership arrangement. We've handled similar situations before. The key is establishing clear boundaries and expectations with the co-owner. She outlined their services, finding qualified tenants, handling maintenance issues, collecting rent, and providing regular financial statements. Most importantly, they would serve as a buffer between me and Kevin, removing the emotional component from property decisions. We'll need to inspect the property and take detailed documentation of your space, Ms. Collins explained. Given the co-ownership, we'll also need to establish protocols for common areas and shared responsibilities. I scheduled the inspection for the following day. During hours I knew Kevin would be at work. My next appointment was with Barbara to finalize the legal framework for this arrangement. She had prepared a comprehensive amendment to our co-ownership agreement, specifying that in lieu of selling my interest, I would be exercising my right to rent my portion while maintaining ownership. This effectively blocks his ability to force you out, Barbara explained, while still providing you income from the property. The management company creates a professional buffer that depersonalizes the situation. We also prepared a formal notice about the property damage, with repair costs to be deducted from any shared maintenance fund before accounting for rental income. Additionally, Barbara drafted an agreement regarding my mother's living arrangement, ensuring her housing security while clarifying boundaries. Send these by certified mail, Barbara advised. It establishes a paper trail and signals you're serious about enforcing your rights. Over the next several days, I methodically prepared for my potential move. I researched visa requirements for Switzerland, initiated the process with human resources at my current institution for a possible leave of absence, and began sorting my belongings into categories: take, store, or sell. Throughout this period, the barrage of messages from Kevin and my mother continued. Kevin oscillated between anger and attempts at reconciliation. "You're overreacting. We can talk this out. Is this really worth destroying our family over?" "Fine, ignore me. Your attorney can talk to mine." "Please, Rachel. Mom's blood pressure is through the roof because of this stress." My mother's messages were predictably manipulative. "I raised you better than this. Your father would be so disappointed in how you're treating family. I'm not feeling well. The doctor says it's stress-related. Is that what you want? Kevin and Stephanie might lose everything because of your selfishness." I maintain my commitment to responding only in writing and only to substantive issues, ignoring the emotional manipulation. When my mother claimed a health crisis, I sent a brief email. "I'm sorry to hear you're unwell. I've sent information about your medical options under your current insurance plan. Please keep me updated on your condition." The property management inspection went smoothly. Ms. Collins was thorough and professional, documenting the current state of my space and identifying areas needing repair from the reunion damage. She seemed unimpressed when Kevin arrived home unexpectedly during the inspection. "Who's this?" he demanded, watching as she photographed water damage on my ceiling. "I'm Jennifer Collins from Elite Property Management," she replied calmly. "Dr. Carter has engaged our services to prepare her space for rental management." Kevin's face went through a fascinating transition from confusion to comprehension to alarm. "Rental? What rental? Rachel, you can't rent out your portion of the house." "Actually, she can," Ms. Collins interjected before I could respond. "The co-ownership agreement explicitly permits either owner to rent their portion provided proper management is in place." We'll be handling all aspects of the tenancy to ensure minimal disruption to the property. Kevin followed us through the remainder of the inspection, peppering me with questions I directed to Ms. Collins or answered with brief, factual responses. When he realized I wouldn't engage in an emotional confrontation, he retreated to call my mother, who predictably appeared at the house 30 minutes later. I was in my office packing books when she entered without knocking, despite the new lock. She must have convinced Kevin to use his emergency key. "This has gone far enough," she announced. "You're tearing this family apart over nothing." I continued packing, my voice steady. "I'm exercising my legal rights regarding property I co-own. There's nothing personal about it." "Nothing personal?" she sputtered. "You're bringing strangers into our home. You're sending legal notices to your own brother. You're threatening the roof over my head." I set down the book I was holding and finally faced her directly. "The legal notices wouldn't be necessary if my privacy and property had been respected. As for your living arrangement, the documents explicitly state your housing is secure as long as you respect the boundaries established." "Boundaries? We're family. We shouldn't need formal agreements and legal papers between us." "The reunion proved exactly why we do," I countered. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a call with Switzerland in 20 minutes. Her expression shifted. "Switzerland? What are you talking about?" For the first time since discovering the reunion, I allowed myself a small smile. "I've been offered a research position with the International Medical Research Consortium. 3 years in Geneva, with the possibility of extension." The news hit her like a physical blow. "You're moving to Switzerland? Just like that? What about your job here? What about this house? What about your family?" "My current institution is supportive of the opportunity. The house will be managed professionally in my absence. And family." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Family will always be family, but sometimes distance provides necessary perspective." She left in tears, and I felt a momentary twinge of guilt that dissolved when I received a text from Kevin an hour later. "You've made Mom sick with worry. Hope you're satisfied with yourself." The certified letters were delivered the following day. By evening, I had received a terse email from an attorney representing Kevin, requesting a meeting to discuss alternatives to the proposed arrangement. Progress. The Swiss position was formally offered 3 days later. I requested a week to finalize my decision, which was graciously granted. During that week, I met with Kevin and his attorney in Barbara's office, neutral territory where emotions could be contained by professional decorum. Kevin's attorney proposed that Kevin purchase my interest in the house at 15% below market value, citing the inconvenience of the rental arrangement and potential property devaluation. Barbara countered with our proposal. Either Kevin purchase my share at full market value plus damages, or accept the management company arrangement with clear terms regarding tenant selection and common area usage. After 2 hours of negotiation, we reached an impasse. Kevin's financial situation, as I had suspected, couldn't support purchasing my share at fair market value. The management company arrangement remained his only viable option, though he clearly despised it. "You're really going to do this?" he asked as we prepared to leave. "Move to Switzerland and rent your rooms to strangers just to prove a point?" "This isn't about proving a point," I replied. "It's about pursuing my career while protecting my investment." The reunion simply clarified that I need legal protections in place to do both. That evening, I formally accepted the position in Switzerland and initiated the visa process. As I packed my apartment over the following days, the missed calls and messages continued to accumulate. I responded only to practical matters, maintaining the emotional distance that now felt necessary for my well-being. Aunt Grace visited the day before my departure, bringing a small going-away gift, a travel journal with a handwritten note inside. "Your father always said you would see the world. Make him proud. Will you stay in touch?" she asked as we shared tea in my nearly empty apartment. "Of course," I promised. "You're welcome to visit me in Switzerland anytime." "I might take you up on that," she smiled. "I've always wanted to see the Alps." As she was leaving, she paused. "Your mother and Kevin will come around eventually. Sometimes people need to experience the consequences of their actions before they can acknowledge them." I nodded, hoping she was right but no longer basing my decisions on that possibility. The night before my flight, I stayed with Madison and her husband, my apartment already turned over to the management company. My phone showed 47 missed calls by then, mostly from Kevin and my mother, but also from various relatives who had attended the reunion and were now caught in the family drama. Madison raised her glass in a toast. To new beginnings in Switzerland. And to recognizing when bridges aren't worth rebuilding, her husband added. I clinked my glass against theirs, feeling a curious mixture of sadness and liberation. To defining family on my own terms. Later that night, I received a final text from Kevin. This isn't over. When you come to your senses and come home, things will be different. I didn't respond, but I saved the message as a reminder of why I needed to leave, and why my power move was not just about asserting control, but about reclaiming my sense of self-worth. 2 weeks after settling into my apartment in Geneva, my phone displayed an almost comical notification, 105 missed calls. Scrolling through the log revealed a pattern. Kevin's number appeared most frequently, followed by my mother's, with occasional attempts from other relatives. The voicemails progressed from irritated to desperate to furious. The final one, left at 3:47 a.m. Boston time, featured Kevin literally screaming, "Rachel, the property manager is showing your rooms to potential tenants today. They're saying I have no right to refuse entry. This is my house too. Call me back immediately, or I swear I'll." The message cut off there, the system having reached its time limit. I saved it alongside the others as documentation, then forwarded it to Barbara with a brief note. FYI, continuing communication despite requests to stop. Please advise. Her response came an hour later. Standard emotional escalation. The management company is aware and proceeding professionally. Focus on your research. We'll handle things here. And focus I did. The International Medical Research Consortium facility was everything I had hoped for: cutting-edge laboratories, brilliant colleagues from around the world, and resources that made my previous work environment seem primitive by comparison. Dr. Muller had assembled a team specializing in various aspects of targeted cancer treatment, with my research forming a key component of their integrated approach. My days quickly filled with meaningful work, and my evenings were spent exploring Geneva or connecting with new colleagues. After years of fighting for recognition and respect in my own home, the immediate professional acceptance was almost disorienting. Your approach to receptor modification is fascinating, commented Dr. Imani, a biochemist from Kenya, during our first team meeting. I've been following your publications since your second paper in the Journal of Experimental Oncology. The Chicago presentation barely scratched the surface, added Dr. Chun, our team's imaging specialist. I'd love to hear more about your methodology when you have time. This was what I had always wanted: peers who valued my work, who saw me as a contributor rather than an inconvenience. The irony that I had to travel 3,700 miles to find it wasn't lost on me. Meanwhile, the situation back in Boston continued to evolve. Barbara sent weekly updates. Week 1. Property management has secured a suitable tenant, a visiting professor from UCLA with excellent references. 1-year lease signed. Kevin attempted to block entry, but retreated when legal consequences were explained. Week 2. First month's rent deposited in your account minus management fees and repair costs. Your mother has sent a formal complaint about strangers using the shared laundry facilities. Management company has established a schedule. Week 3. Kevin has engaged a new attorney seeking to invalidate the management agreement. Their case has no merit, but prepare for continued legal maneuvering. Through it all, the messages from family continued, though their tone gradually shifted. Kevin's rage gave way to occasional attempts at guilt. The tenant they found is weird. Keeps odd hours. Mom is uncomfortable in her own home. Dad would have never let this family fall apart like this. At least tell me how long you're planning to punish us. My mother's approach was more varied, cycling through anger, martyrdom, and occasional glimpses of reflection. I've never been so humiliated in my life. Everyone is asking where you've gone. My doctor has put me on anxiety medication because of this situation. I don't understand why you couldn't talk to us instead of running away. Maybe we should have told you about the reunion. That last message, the first acknowledgement of wrongdoing, however tentative, came 6 weeks after my departure. I broke my silence to respond with a simple, "Yes, you should have." It opened a door to a different kind of communication. Not warm or immediately reconciliatory, but at least rooted in reality rather than manipulation. "We didn't think you'd care," she wrote back. "You've always kept yourself separate from family gatherings." "I was never invited to most of them," I replied. "And my home was used without my consent. It's Kevin's home too. My private apartment isn't." We had an agreement. Several days passed before her next message. "I'm trying to understand your perspective." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. A small crack in the wall of denial that had characterized our relationship for years. As my work in Switzerland progressed, I developed new friendships that felt more authentic than most of my family relationships ever had. My research team celebrated successes together, supported each other through setbacks, and genuinely appreciated each other's contributions. We shared meals, explored the city, and gradually formed connections that had nothing to do with obligation or shared DNA. Madison visited during my 3rd month, marveling at my transformation. "You seem lighter," she observed as we walked along Lake Geneva. "Like you've shed something heavy you've been carrying." "Expectations, maybe," I suggested. "The weight of trying to belong somewhere I was never truly wanted." She nodded thoughtfully. "Family should be the people who see you clearly and love you anyway, not the people who try to make you invisible." Back in Boston, the practical arrangements stabilized. The tenant proved reliable, the management company handled maintenance issues efficiently, and Kevin eventually stopped trying to sabotage the arrangement when it became clear the legal framework was solid. 6 months into my Swiss adventure, I received an unexpected email from Kevin. "I'm writing this from Dad's old study. The tenant is at some conference, and the management company let me in to fix a plumbing issue in the shared bathroom. Being in this house without you feels strange. I keep expecting to hear you typing away upstairs or coming down for coffee. I'm not going to apologize via email for something that deserves a face-to-face conversation, but I will say this. I've had time to think about how things have always been between us. Mom keeps saying you abandoned the family, but sitting here in this empty house, I'm starting to wonder if maybe we abandoned you first, long before Switzerland. Stephanie's pregnant. Found out last week. It's making me think about what kind of father I want to be, what kind of family we want to create. I don't have answers yet, but I'm asking questions I probably should have asked years ago. Anyway, your research made the news here. Something about clinical trials showing promise? Mom cut out the article. I think she's got it on the refrigerator, though she denies it when I mention it. Kevin. I read the email several times, unsure how to respond or even how to feel. It wasn't the groveling apology part of me had fantasized about in darker moments, but there was an authenticity to it that suggested real reflection. After waiting a day to process, I replied, "Congratulations on the baby. That's significant news. The clinical trials are preliminary but promising. We're seeing tumor reduction in 78% of cases, with minimal side effects compared to traditional approaches. It's early, but it could change how we approach certain aggressive cancers. I'm not ready to pretend everything is fine between us, but I appreciate your email. The house was always more your dream than mine. My work is my home now, and for the first time, I'm surrounded by people who value what I contribute. Tell Mom I'm glad." She kept the article. Rachel. Our communication continued sporadically after that, not warm family chats, but civil exchanges that acknowledged our shared history without sugarcoating the broken parts. Kevin sent ultrasound pictures. I sent links to published research papers. Mom occasionally added brief notes to Kevin's emails, gradually finding her own voice in our new dynamic. As my 1-year anniversary in Switzerland approached, Barbara forwarded a formal offer from Kevin. He wanted to buy my share of the house at full market value, having secured financing through Stephanie's parents and a new mortgage. "Your decision," Barbara noted. "The management arrangement is working well, but this would give you a clean break if that's what you want." I discussed it with my new friends over dinner that evening, something I would never have done before. making important decisions without seeking external perspective. What would selling mean to you? Ask Lucia, a neurologist from Brazil who had become a close friend. Financial security, I replied, and freedom from an arrangement that still requires some emotional energy to maintain. But, prompted Dr. Imani, now both colleague and confidant. But it feels like erasing myself from the family narrative entirely, I admitted. Like confirming I never really belonged there. Or, suggested Mark, a Swiss researcher whose family had lived in Geneva for generations, perhaps it's recognizing that your story continues elsewhere, and that's perfectly valid. After careful consideration, I accepted Kevin's offer with specific conditions. A portion of the proceeds would create a medical research scholarship in my father's name, and my mother's living arrangement would be legally protected for her lifetime. The paperwork was finalized without drama, the funds transferred cleanly. My connection to the physical structure that had never quite felt like home was severed, but something else remained, a tenuous thread of family connection rebuilt on more honest terms. A year and a half after my dramatic departure, I returned to Boston for a conference. I arranged to meet Kevin, Stephanie, and their 2-month-old daughter, Emily, for dinner. My mother joined us, looking older, but somehow softer than I remembered. The conversation was awkward at times, with carefully avoided topics and occasional tense silences. But when Kevin handed me his daughter to hold, her tiny fingers wrapping around mine, I felt an unexpected surge of connection. "She has Dad's eyes," I observed quietly. Mom nodded, her own eyes glistening. "James would have adored her. And he would have been so proud of your research," Kevin added. "The article said your treatment approach could save thousands of lives." If the expanded trials confirm our initial results, I qualified, though I couldn't help but feel warmed by the acknowledgement. Later, as we prepared to leave the restaurant, Mom hesitated before asking, "Will you visit again before returning to Switzerland?" "I have meetings for the next 3 days," I explained. "But perhaps breakfast before my flight on Sunday?" The relief on her face was evident. "I'd like that." We didn't hug goodbye. We weren't there yet. But there was a moment of eye contact, of mutual recognition, that felt more authentic than any forced physical affection would have. Back in my hotel room, I reflected on how far I'd come from that shocking moment of discovery under the Family Means Forever banner. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something more complex, a hard-won wisdom about boundaries, self-worth, and the courage to define family on my own terms. My phone chimed with a message from Lucia. "How was the family dinner?" "Survival or revival?" I smiled as I typed my response. "A little of both. Some bridges can't be fully rebuilt, but maybe we're creating something different instead. Something based on who we are now, not who we pretended to be before." The next morning, I woke to an email notification. My research team in Switzerland had received approval for expanded clinical trials. Real people would soon benefit from work that might never have happened if I hadn't found the courage to leave. "Family means forever," the banner had proclaimed. Perhaps that was true, but not in the way my mother and brother had intended. The bonds of family, both those we're born into and those we choose, shape us forever, for better or worse. The difference is in whether we allow those bonds to become chains or strengthen us as we forge our own paths. As I prepare for my final day in Boston before returning to my new home in Switzerland, I wonder, have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Has anyone else discovered that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who should love us most? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away from what hurts us, especially when it comes wrapped in the guise of family. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve to be seen, valued, and respected, no matter what any banner says.